We've got 6 different news stories, guys, to look at. It's time for another episode of the World's Newsround. Let's go. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. This is Reganelite here with another episode of the World Newsround, and we start with Al Jazeera with the headline that the court orders the Netherlands to halt delivery of fighter jet parts to Israel. The court noted there is a clear risk that the parts are being used in serious violations of international humanitarian law. This is really significant. I have to say that coming from somebody coming from the UK, knowing that our nation actually does supply weapons and equipment to Israel, and the very fact that there's a very possibility that we could find ourselves breaching violations of humanitarian law here because we're potentially aiding and abetting a country that is causing genocide, which could be really, really bad. And it appears here that the Netherlands courts are seeing this potential problem down the road. And it looks like they're basically saying, yeah, you're going to stop. Probably, my understanding is it's probably going to say, yeah, you need to stop supplying stuff to Israel. You need to kind of wash your hands of any kind of potential risks here. We know that America's got their hands deep in this. We know that Britain's got its hands deep in it with regards to what's happening in the conflict between Israel and Gaza. And I know it's one that I've spoken about on numerous occasions, as you guys know. But specifically, the story is about, obviously, for me, it's not just about here, and we will read into it. It's not just about the Netherlands here. This is about other nations that are potentially supplying weapons and arms to Israel that could aid in and abetting in acts of genocide that they are potentially committing. Now, it's obviously one of the arguments that Israel has is that the definition of it. There is much footage that has been shown on TikTok, on Twitter, and other social medias where footage has been shown that the Israel Defense Force, the IDF, have committed acts of genocide. Absolutely horrific. I have seen some of them myself, which is absolutely horrible. But that doesn't But to be clear, it's my gripe is not with Israel itself. It is its government and its leader, and the way that they are handling this since the October 7th attack, which devastatingly, so many innocent Israelis lost their lives, and some are still being held hostage by Hamas as well. And some of them have, rather than have their lives saved, have ended up being accidentally shot by Israeli armed defense forces. I know. So it's a horrible situation. It's a very horrible situation, a toxic situation that's happening over there, and the Netherlands courts here are being very careful about this. So let's read into this, guys. Let's just see what they have to say. So a Dutch court has ordered the government to halt the delivery of parts of an F-35 fighter jet being used by Israel in its bombardment of the Gaza Strip. The verdict, delivered by an appeals court on Monday, said there is a clear risk that the parts of the Netherlands is exporting is being used in serious violations of international humanitarian law. That is very true, considering that some of the targets that they're hitting, they claim they're hitting specific targets when in fact they've actually just decimated an entire area. And the footage is there. There's loads of footage out there for people to see, so it's very hard to make the distinction when the bombings are pretty much going everywhere and not a specific target. The court said it's likely that Israel is using the F-35s in attacks on Gaza, which are leading to unacceptable human casualties. It dismissed the Dutch state's argument that it did not have to do a new check on the permit for the exports. However, in response on Monday's ruling, the Dutch government said it would appeal the order at the Supreme Court, arguing that the weapons parts were crucial to Israel's ability to protect itself from threats in the region, for example, from Iran, Yemen, Syria, and Lebanon. Nobody's saying that they shouldn't try to protect themselves from other nations. Nobody's disputing that Israel should not have the right to defend itself. What they don't have the right to do is commit the atrocities and acts of genocide in retaliation for what's happened, but what happened to them on October the 7th and what's happened beforehand. That doesn't give them the right to commit the atrocities that they are causing. It's very important to make that distinction. Yes, they have the right to defend themselves. It doesn't give them the right to commit acts of genocide, which is what which is what much footage is being shown out there to be seen. The ruling followed an appeal by Amnesty International and Oxfam against a lower court decision last year that rejected their argument that supply in the past contributed to the alleged contributing to wild scale and serious violations of humanitarian law by Israel and Gaza. Human rights organisations have accused the government of being complacent in war crimes by maintaining the deliveries. In December, a court dismissed the case, and it said the government had large degrees of freedom in weighing political and policy issues on arms exports. However, that was dismissed by the appeals court, which said political and economic concerns did not trump the clear risk of violation of the laws of war. The appeals court instead ordered the government to block all exports of the fighter jet parts to Israel within 7 days. It is undeniable that there is a clear risk that exporting the F-35 parts are being used in serious violations of international humanitarian law, Judge Boris said in the ruling, exciting cheers from several people in the courtroom. Israel has repeatedly denied allegations that it is committing war crimes during its military operation in the enclave. However, the International Court of Justice in January called on Israel to guard against any activities in the enclave that could constitute genocide. Well, it's very hard for them to do that when there's a lot of footage out there showing that they are committing acts of genocide. It's very hard for them to make that distinction there. The Ministry of Health in the Hamas-ruled Gaza Strip on Monday said at least 28,340 people had been killed in the besieged territory during the war, including 164 in the past 24 hours. A total of 67,984 people have been wounded since the start of the hostilities on October 7th, after Hamas killed about 1,100 people and took 240 or so captive in an attack on Israel. The Dutch authorities said last year that it was unclear whether they had the power to intervene in the deliveries. The Netherlands houses one of several regional warehouses from which US-made aircraft parts are distributed to countries on request. The Dutch facility has supplied Israel with at least one shipment since the start of the war. Government lawyers also argued that Israel could easily procure parts of the F-35s elsewhere if the Dutch facility did not supply them. The court ruling ordered the government to halt the exports so it can be appealed by the Dutch authorities. Nobody's saying that they can't get them elsewhere, because they will get them elsewhere if they need to. I don't think that's kind of the crux of the. I don't think it's a case about, well, if they don't take them from us, they'll take them from elsewhere. It's more about the morality of this. The moral point of this is what I think is what people need to understand. You're not going to stop them getting those parts if Israel wants them. Nobody's going to dispute that. And the argument is, well, we might as well take money off them if we can. Well, do you want to be a part of this? Do your government, does your people want to be? Does the Dutch public want to be a part of this? And I'm going to go out on a limb and say they probably don't want to be part of this. Is my absolute guess, and I think they would rather sacrifice not actually supplying Israel at all, and kind of just staying and not being a part, not being contributing at all to this conflict in any way, shape, or form. I think that's what they would rather do. Yes, Israel can get them elsewhere. We know they can get them elsewhere, but it's better that you wash your hands of it, of any kind of wash your hands of it, so that this doesn't really come crashing on you, if I'm honest. And I have to wait and see. Obviously, there is a Supreme Court case to be held, so that it's not certain that it's still. It's not certain that they will stop, even though there was this ruling here. It's going to possibly go to the Supreme Court, so they are going to appeal it. So it's not entirely over for the Netherlands, but it is interesting to say the least. And yeah, we'll try and keep an eye out of it. If I have an update on the ruling, I'll try and get it in a short video for you guys. So the next one we got, guys, is from the Associated Press. This interesting one, still sticking with Europe, guys. And the headline is the former Prime Minister Alexander Stubb wins the Finnish presidency, narrowly defeating the ex-top diplomat Pekka Haavisto. So this is with regards to the Finnish presidential election. So don't have too much on it myself, so let's read a little bit into it before I share my thoughts. So the former Prime Minister Alexander Stubb won Finland's election runoff Sunday against the ex-foreign minister Pekka Haavisto in a close race for the presidency and the task of steering the Nordic country's foreign and security policy now it is a member of NATO following Russia's invasion of Ukraine. With all the votes counted, centre-right candidate Stubb of the National Coalition Party had 51.6% of the vote, while independent candidate Haavisto from the Green Left got 48.4% of the vote. The 55-year-old Stubb, who was Prime Minister in 2014-2015 and started his political career as a lawmaker at the European Parliament in 2004, will become the 13th President of Finland since the Nordic country's independence from the Russian Empire in 1917. Haavisto conceded a defeat after projection by the Finnish public broadcaster YLE, showing a win for Stubb was released Sunday night. He shook Stubb's hand and congratulated him at Helsinki City Hall, where the candidates and the media were watching the results come in. The month-long election campaign was polite and non-confidential, in line with consensus-driven Finnish politics, with no below-the-belt attacks from any of the candidates, something that Stubb noted in his speech in Haavisto. This has been a great race, Stubb told Haavisto after the result was clear. I'm proud that I've been able to run with you in these elections. Thanks for a good race. Stubb and Haavisto, 65, were the main contenders in the election, where over 4 million eligible voters picked a successor to a hugely popular President Sauli Niinisto, whose second 6-year term expires in March. He wasn't eligible for re-election. Sunday's runoff was required because none of the original 9 candidates got more than half the votes in January 28's first round. Stubb emerged at the top with 27.3%, with Haavisto the runner-up on 25.8%. Several polls indicated Stubb, who also served as Finland's Foreign, Finance and European Affairs Minister, was favourite to win the presidency. Initial voter turnout was 70.7%, markedly lower than the first voting round when it was 75%. Unlike in most European countries, the President of Finland holds executive power in formulating foreign and security policy together with the government, especially in concerning countries outside the European Union, such as the United States, Russia and China. And during the election campaign, Stubb and Haavisto largely agreed on Finland's foreign policy and security priorities. These include maintaining a hard line towards Moscow and Russia's current leadership, strengthening its security ties with Washington, and the need to help Ukraine both militarily and on a civilian level. Finland shared a 1,340-kilometre, that's 832-mile border with Russia. Yeah, always have to remember they have a massive border with Russia from a geography perspective. The head of state also commanded the military, particularly, most importantly, in Europe's current security environment and the changed geopolitical situation of Finland, which joined NATO in April 2023 in the aftermath of Russia's attack on Ukraine a year earlier. The Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky was one of the first foreign delegates to send sincere congratulations to Stubb, a staunch supporter of Kiev, on his win. He said in the message on X for Ukraine and Finland, in solidarity with other parties, are strengthening the security of the entire European and each nation into our continent. I look forward to advancing our relationships and our shared vision of a free, united and well-defended Europe. The Finnish president is expected to remain above the fray day-to-day politics and largely stay out of domestic political disputes. Haavisto was Finland's top diplomat in 2019-2023 and the main negotiator for its entry into NATO. A former conflict mediator with the United Nations and a passionate environmentalist, this was his third bid for presidency. That's it. So interesting. What I will say in terms of this, obviously, I wish the new president well, and hopefully Finland can continue to prosper as a good nation. They are without doubt one of the happiest nations on the planet, and there's no below the like they said in the article there. There's no like below the belt stuff. It's a different culture, different vibe to other European nations, especially upper Western nations. And I think it was important just to kind of highlight what's happening there in terms of its election. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see how Stubb how he does as a president, because he's obviously been wanting it for made 3 bids and it's been unsuccessful 3 times. So hopefully he can help strengthen Finland's ties with other NATO members. Just continue to hopefully Finland can continue to basically contribute in their part to its people. And while I don't have too much on Finland itself, one thing I do know is that Finland has one of the best educational systems on the planet. They have one of the happiest populations on the planet as well. So all the more reason, if you ever get an opportunity to go to Helsinki, to go to the country Finland, it's worth going just for the experience. My parents had the pleasure of going to Helsinki for a day or 2, and they said it was an absolutely amazing experience. So obviously we'll keep an eye on anything big happening in Finland, but yeah, those are the elections there. Like I said, there's lots of elections happening this year. I've talked about this before in the election video I did at the start of the year. So many elections happening. and still many more to go, guys. Guys, while you're here, if you can, hit the like button, be greatly appreciated, and share it across social media so others are notified of this video, and subscribe because it really does help support the channel. So the next one we've got for you guys is from Euronews. This is in response to comments, disparages that Donald Trump made. The headline is Poland, France and Germany vowed to make Europe stronger as fears grow over Russia and Trump. So what's this about? So recently Donald Trump made some initial comments that really sparked a lot of concern and anger. We're not covering I don't think we're not going to cover it directly here, but we'll probably cover it on the live stream on the Snowflake Watch. Most likely we'll listen to the comments and respond then. But essentially what he was basically saying is that European nations are not paying enough for their part for defence spending in NATO, and saying that, basically jokingly saying, oh, let Russia run them over, basically, and America's not going to come and support them if it attacks a NATO country, which goes against everything that NATO stands for. And if that was to happen, there would be absolute worldwide panic for all the countries that are part of NATO. If that was to happen, if a NATO country was to be invaded, whether it's Russia or whoever, if it was to be invaded and other NATO countries did not come in support, that would cause absolute pandemonium across the entire globe. It really would, because the whole point of NATO is to be an alliance to be there to support each other. And Donald Trump's comments, even if he's joking about it, it's a very scary comments to be making, and it's not helping anyone in any way, shape or form. Now, in terms of what's relationship between America, Europe and the EU, the EU needs to become less reliant on America over time. I know they need to I'm not going to go as far as to say they should have an EU army, but I definitely think there needs to be more investment and a more recruitment drive in terms of military for not just EU nations, but even the UK. That needs to start coming somewhere, because there has to come a point where they have to realise that they can't rely on America if America cannot even control itself when it comes to its own politicians. You just can't trust them. The trust in America is fading when you have someone like Trump getting so close to that presidency. And if he gets it, basically means that Europe is on its own, and it really does make it vulnerable to Russia. So there's a lot of concern, without a shadow of a doubt, and I do fear for Europe when you have someone like Trump basically saying that he's not going to do anything. Is he going to sit back and let Taiwan get taken as well by China? There's a lot of those questions that are battering around. So, but here it looks like obviously some of the EU nations are going to show their renewed strength for each other. So let's just read. It's not too much of this one, but we'll read into it a bit. So the diplomatic push came after Trump shocked many in Europe by appearing to invite Russia to invade any NATO member, not spending enough on its own defence. It's a stupid comment to make. It's not helping anyone anywhere. All you're doing is inciting intimidation and fear. This man's very cozy enough. He's cozied up to Putin before as well. So you just cannot trust Trump if he is to become the next US president. You just cannot trust this man. The governments of Poland, France and Germany have vowed to make Europe a security and defensive power with a greater ability to back Ukraine. The move is taken on urgency as fears grow that the former Donald Trump might return to the White House and allow Russia to expand its aggression. The Polish Prime Minister Donald Tusk, who met with French President Emmanuel Macron in Paris and German Chancellor Olaf Scholz in Berlin on Monday, said he wanted to revitalise his nation's relations with its key European partners. There is no reason why we should be so clearly militarily weaker than Russia, and therefore increasing production and intensifying the cooperation are an absolute indisputable priorities. Tusk has said an argument for the European Union to become a military power in its own right. The diplomatic push came after Trump shocked so many in Europe over the weekend by appearing to invite Russia to invade any NATO member, not spending enough on its own defence. You didn't pay, you Willigan, Trump recounted an unidentified NATO member during his presidency. No, I would not protect you. In fact, I would encourage them to do whatever the hell they want. You got to pay your bills. Like, you're talking about an entire nation, an entire population. You're talking about if Russia was to invade a country, right? What's happening with Ukraine? You're talking about an entire population, an entire nation of people being attacked, people dying, people's homes destroyed, and all that is happening. And you have this man joking about this kind of thing, allegedly, or being serious. I can't read this man. There's nothing about this at all that should be. If you're not concerned, then you're absolutely mad. It's with absolutely insane comments from Trump. It absolutely is. Trump's words at a campaign rally were particularly alarming for NATO frontline nations such as Poland, which experienced both German and Soviet occupation during World War II and later spent decades under Soviet control. Asked about Trump's remarks, Tusk said they should act like a cold shower for all those who continue to underestimate the increasing real threat which Europe is facing. Tusk also urged European nations to invest more in military projects in order to achieve as quickly as possible in the next dozen or so months much greater air defense capabilities and much greater production capabilities in terms of ammunition. Yeah, they need to do them. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz also blasted Trump's comments. NATO's promise of protection is unrestricted, one for all and all for one, Scholz said, without mentioning the former president by name. No one can play or deal with Europe's security, the Chancellor said. Macron, speaking alongside Tusk in Paris, said Europe will to further supply and meet Ukraine's needs is crucial after leaders of the 27 EU members sealed a deal to provide Ukraine with 50 billion euros in support for its war-ravaged economy. Yeah, they finally got a deal passed. They managed to do it. They got because Viktor Orban was a absolute pain in the butt when it came to trying to get it through, but they managed to finally get it through. This will enable us to make Europe a security and defensive pact that is both complementary to NATO and a pillar for the Atlantic Alliance, Macron said. Trump's remarks raised concerns that if re-elected he could embolden Russia to attack other countries besides Ukraine. NATO's Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg issued a statement Sunday saying that Trump's remarks put American troops and their allies at greater risk. And that's one of the other bigger things as well. These comments put American troops at risk on European soil by saying that as well. So people tend to forget that as well. So yeah, not helping anyone with those comments in any way, shape or form. I think it's really dangerous from him. But I will be talking obviously more about it after. Well, I'll probably be talking about it again at some point. It's not good at all, guys. We're going to just take a little break things up a little bit. I know I'm only 22 minutes in. I've only got 6 stories for you guys, and I'm actually going through them a lot faster than I expected, so probably not even going to get an hour done today. But I hope you guys enjoyed this 5 pledges video from Michael Spicer. I don't know if anyone's seen this one. It's quite an old one, but I thought this one was quite hilarious, so I hope you guys enjoy this.
Prime Minister, you've been very vocal about your 5 pledges, but some people have accused you of fudging every single question you're asked by repeating your 5 pledges over and over again until they lose their meaning, not that they had much meaning to start with. What do you say to that? Well, look, I've laid out 5 pledges, which are to halve inflation, grow the economy, reduce national debt, cut NHS waiting times, and stop the votes. Those are my priorities, and I believe those are the priorities of the British people. So that's what I'm talking about. You just used your 5 pledges to avoid answering my question. I'm just asking what you say to people who accuse you of using the 5 pledges to avoid answering questions. Well, look, my priorities and the priorities of the British people, as I've said, is to halve inflation, grow national debt, reduce the economy, stop NHS waiting times and cut the votes. Those are my pledges, and that's what I'm going to deliver. You did it again. Can you stop doing that? Are you concerned that answering every question with your 5 pledges is going to render them completely worthless because you say them too often? Well, look, my priorities and the priorities of the British people are the same. And that is to reduce inflation, cut the economy, stop the NHS, halve the times and vote the stops. Those are my pledges and they are promises that I will deliver on. See, the weird thing is that you are actually answering my question by not answering my question. Do you see? I mean, it's fucking infuriating, to be honest with you. Well, look, if you ask the British people what they think the priorities of Britain should be, oh my God, they will tell you it is to halve inflation, stop the national economy, reduce NHS waiting votes, grow the times and stop the halves. And I agree with with them, and that's what I'm going to deliver on. All right, well, I've got another question to ask you here, but seeing as you don't answer questions, I'm just going to sit here and play with one of those things that you get in gift shops that go, oh. There you go. What's your answer to that? Well, look, my priorities are clear. I am going to stop inflation, cut the boats in half, reduce the time, and inflate the national NHS boat economy. Those are the priorities that the British public want me to deliver on, and I will. Prime Minister, thank you. Thank you.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Oh, that's brilliant. That was a brilliant one. Oh, God. So embarrassing though as well, guys. It's so embarrassing to know that we have a prime minister who just rinse and repeats the same things, you know. Oh dear, it's really, really bad. Guys, if you want to financially support me in the work that I do here, you can do so by becoming a Patreon supporter, and as well becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p. Both the links for them are in the description if you guys want to financially support me in the work I do here. So the next one we got is from CNN, guys. So we're going to South America, and I've actually talked about this before, if not on Snowflake Corner, but probably here on World Newsround as well. I know the headline's cut off, but it's because we read the article. So the headline is Venezuela builds forces near the border with Guyana despite the agreement to de-escalate. So when Venezuela had its presidential election, the president vowed that he would. There's been a dispute. For those who don't know the context, there's been a dispute over a piece of land that Guyana holds. There is a long line of history between Venezuela and Guyana over this land, and Venezuela. The reason why Venezuela wants this land, in particular, not so much just in terms of expansion, but it's more to do with the resources that are there. Is why they really want the land, and they had both made an agreement, and because I remember we were talking about this, there was an agreement put in place of both nations to de-escalate, not to cause anything, and the forefront of what our understanding was the Venezuelan president at the time was basically saying all these things to kind of just like build up support for his base, basically in Venezuela. It was kind of just him, just kind of rhetoric talk. So the fact that this here states that he's putting forces on the border with Guyana is deeply, deeply concerning. Guyana does not have in any way, shape or form anywhere near the army to defend itself against Venezuela. I'm sure that the United Nations and some other countries will be looking very closely at this. Whether or not they will intervene if Venezuela crosses the line and invades, I don't know if they will or not, but there have been threats, obviously. I imagine that Venezuela, who has right now agreements with when it comes to the oil, its crude oil that gets worked in America, I'm sure that will come to an end, obviously, if Venezuela does do what it may potentially do here. It may just be a case of an act of intimidation from Venezuela as well, from this. But regardless whether it's an act of intimidation or whether they actually cross the border, it's a very dangerous precedent that has been set. And this is only on Saturday, so I have not seen an update yet that states that they have crossed the border or war or any kind of conflict has begun yet. I'm going to say yet because we honestly don't know, but it's incredibly concerning to say the least. So satellite images show Venezuela has boasted its military presence near the border of Guyana, despite Carcasses said he would pursue a diplomatic avenue to try and resolve the long-standing territorial dispute over an oil-rich piece of Guyana's land. Imagery from MACMAR collected in January shows an expansion of operations at Venezuela's Aquino Island military base on the Cani River, which borders Guyana, with several new sections of rainforest cleared and recently others being bulldozed when the images were captured. The pictures also show new infrastructure and several armoured vehicles present on the site. While the base airstrip appears unchanged, a helicopter could be seen on it and access roads were improved. North of the base on the Sioni River crosses that provides land access to the base, a heavy river ferry is visible. and large swathes of rainforest has been cleared. Large stockpiles of what appears to be construction supplies are visible on the side of the roads, as are 3 armoured vehicles. We're going to see the picture in a moment. In January, Venezuela bragged about expanding its military presence in the region in propaganda videos released on its army social media accounts, showing bulldozers clearing land, as well as light tanks and infantry fighting vehicles on its move in the Mi-17 military transport helicopter. So this is obviously what it appears to be before. So aerial views of Ancona Island military base on the January 28, 2021 and 13th. So this is July 2028, 2021. This is what it was before. And this is what it appears now. So they have cleared some space around here from the looks of it. Doesn't really... there's not... It's not a lot to see there because it is only one picture. But yeah, we can see obviously they have cleared more space on the base without a shadow of a doubt. But it could be obviously, it could be just simply expanding the military base. But yeah, it's entirely possible that this could be more as well. So that it should be a cause for concern. The expansion of the base promised by the 11th Armored Brigade together with the 6th Venezuelan Army Corps engineers is improving the response system of the FAMB in its improved border area with the state of Guyana, Escobar, and repealing any attempts against the Republic, the Venezuelan army said in the post on X. Now, why on earth? Well, that's just kind of... Guyanans know that they don't have any chance they have no reason to hostilities towards Venezuela. This is just rhetoric talk from the Venezuelan army here. Doesn't just sit right all with me. The expansion of Venezuela's operations along the disputed border was first reported by the Washington-based think tank, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, the CSIS. Tensions over the land, which amounts to about 2/3 of Guyana's national territory, mounted last year after the Venezuelan referendum in which voters ascended to create a Venezuelan state with the disputed region. Guyana has called the move a step towards annexation and an existential threat as the spectre of armed conflict looms over the region. Venezuela later reached an agreement with Guyana on December the 15th to avoid escalation to try and settle the dispute between the two countries without force. In a joint declaration, both sides agreed to not threaten or to use force against one another in any circumstances and to refrain whether the words or deeds from escalating any conflict or disagreement arising from any conversations between them. CNN has reached out to the Venezuelan Foreign Ministry for comment and looks like they have not responded. But it is still, if you look at it from there, completely fine, nothing there, and then obviously a few stuff there. But it could be something, it could be nothing. I think it's the best way to put it. It is a cause for concern without a shadow of a doubt, and we should be a little bit cautious of that. I wouldn't go as far to say basically like it's all really bad, but Guyana should be very cautious, that's for sure. Yeah, I mean the country is not in a great place, Venezuela, as it is. It's never been doing well. It's always had corruption issues without a shadow of a doubt. The country has never really had a stable economy, and it's it's a real shame actually. You would think a country that has the resources that it has, you would think it'd be able to find some, but too much, the word greed comes to mind when I think of what's happened to Venezuela. Too many people within the country just lusting for power, and if they didn't have that greed, I think there'd be a lot more stable and probably democratic economy if they didn't have some terrible people running the place. It's a population that should not be in the situation it is, especially with the resources it has. It really should not. But that's where they are right now, I'm afraid. Speaking where we are right now, we are going back in sorts and the ways to Benjamin Netanyahu and Israel and Gaza, guys. This is an exclusive from NBC, guys. So Biden disparages Netanyahu in private but hasn't significantly changed US policy towards Israel and Gaza. As reported, Palestinian death toll in the Gaza Strip reaches 28,000. The president continues to believe that unequivocally support in Israel is the right policy. Now, obviously, we talked a little bit about this earlier, obviously, about what's happening with Israel. Now, whether or not he has privately... Now, we don't know that. So they're obviously going to cite. They're going to cite that there are sources. They're going to cite that sources within from NBC are saying that he has had these conversations. We don't know if that's true or not. If that is the case, he's nowhere near applying enough pressure on it. If it's to be true in any way, shape, or form. This is also having a damning effect on. This will also have an effect on the U.S. election as well. And a lot of people, Biden has done some good things as the U.S. president. However, one thing I don't want to put words too much into the mouths of American people, but they don't want another 4 years of President Biden. That's one thing they don't want. But they also don't want that. Some of them people really, really, really don't want President Trump either. So they're kind of screwed. And they should not have to be in this situation where they have to choose between two old white men. And considering that Joe Biden has really, really started, getting messed up with his comments and things on the podium, it's incredibly concerning to say the least. It really, really is. And they're going to have him for another 4 years. The Democrats really are making a terrible, terrible mistake keeping Joe Biden, in my opinion. I really, really do. And you can just see, because Donald Trump has already stated he wants to have a debate with Biden. You can see this debate going all over the goddamn place with both of them, considering how nuts it is. America deserves better than both of them. I'm sorry. Don't want another 4 years of Biden, and you certainly don't want another 4 years of Trump. And they're kind of stuck in this disparity. But whether or not Joe Biden actually is applying any pressure with Netanyahu behind closed doors, we're not seeing it. I'm not seeing it, and I know, and I don't know how much you guys are seeing any kind of ease whatsoever from Israel, because I'm not seeing that. But he knows, well, I'd say not Biden specifically, but his team knows that if they need to do something to de-escalate things, because it's not helping their image as well, especially when 27,000 people have lost their lives, and they know that they can do something to reduce that deficit, to reduce the loss of life that's happening within the Gaza Strip. That's one thing that America does know that it can do. So President Joe Biden has been venting his frustration in recent private conversations, some of them with campaign donors, over his inability to persuade Israel to change its military tactics in the Gaza Strip. And he has named Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as the primary obstacle, according to 5 people directly familiar with these comments. Biden has been trying to get Israel to agree to a ceasefire, but Netanyahu is giving him hell and is impossible to deal with, said the people familiar with Biden's comments, who all asked not to be named. So Biden does privately is basically saying, allegedly, I'm going to stress allegedly because we don't know how true this is. So they're stating here that Joe Biden wants a ceasefire, that he wants this, but he's not going as far to say he's making it public. He just feels that this is enough. One of the people said in his views expressed by Biden, it has to stop. Biden has in recent weeks spoken privately about Netanyahu, a leader that he has known for decades, with a candor that has surprised some of those on the receiving end of his comments. People familiar with them said his descriptions of his dealings with Netanyahu are peppered with contemptuous references to Netanyahu as this guy, these people said. And at least 3 recent instances, Biden has called Netanyahu a according to 3 of the people directly familiar with his comments. I think we can. There's a lot more words I would describe Netanyahu and a lot worse, and that you can call him that. There's a lot worse comments to make about him. To be fair, guys. Apologies for yawning so much. I don't know. It's because it's early morning here at the time of this recording. Asked about Biden's private comments about Netanyahu, a spokesperson for the National Security Council said in a statement that the two leaders have a respectable relationship. The president has been clear where he disagrees with Prime Minister Netanyahu, but this is a decade-long relationship that is respectful in public and in private, the spokesperson said. Since he embraced Netanyahu with a bear hug during a visit to Israel after Hamas terrorist attack killed 1,200 people on October the 7th, Biden has grown steadily more frustrated with the rise in Palestinian civilian death toll in Gaza, now reported 28,000, and Netanyahu's reluctance to pursue a long-term peace agreement. The bluntness of Biden's private, unfiltered reflections on Netanyahu, as well as Israel's premier's failure to shift tactics in Gaza, suggests that the dynamic between the two leaders could be nearing an infestation point. can't say. Israel is planning a ground assault on Rafah in the city in southern Gaza, where more than 1 million Palestinians displaced from northern Gaza are sheltering. Netanyahu has vowed to press ahead with the operation, even though US officials have repeatedly expressed their opposition to it, public opposition to it, unless Israel provides safe passage to Palestinian civilians. On Sunday, Biden told Netanyahu in a phone call that he believes a military operation in Rafah should not proceed without credible and executable plan for protecting and supporting the Palestinians sheltering there, the White House said in a statement. The bulk of their 45-minute conversation focused on long-discussed but repeatedly delayed agreements between Israel and Hamas to free hostages being held in Gaza in exchange for a pause in military operations and the release of Palestinian prisoners, according to the White House. Biden took a notable sharper tone Thursday and described Israel's military assault in Gaza as over the top. The Secretary of State Antony Blinken also decidedly blunt last week after a meeting with Netanyahu in Israel. Blinken said he told Netanyahu that the number of Palestinian civilians who are dying each day because of Israel's military operation remains too high. They're trying to cozy up, but at the same time trying to be critical, is what they appear to be saying here. Yet people familiar with Biden's private comments said he has told them he believes it would be counterproductive for him to be too harsh on Netanyahu publicly. He should be. I think he should be. You know, imagine if America basically threatened to pull all its support for Israel. Just imagine that. Imagine if Joe Biden basically said, "Oh well, we're gonna stop supplying you guys with weapons and arms. We're gonna stop supporting you. We're gonna pull completely out of the region." Imagine if they did that. Just imagine if they did that. Do you think Israel would be able to defend itself without America? Do we think that Israel would be all right without America? Just imagine the Western nations pulling out and leaving Israel vulnerable to all the nations around it. I just wonder. I don't think they would be able to hold on their own. Biden's frustration with Netanyahu has also not led to a major policy shift, but his administration has begun to consider such options. 2 weeks ago, officials told NBC News that the administration was discussing delaying or slowing US weapons sales to Israel as leverage to get Netanyahu to dial down Israeli military operations in Gaza and do more to protect the civilians. Yeah, apply pressure. This is one of the ways you can do it. You have to apply pressure to him and his government. They're not willing to listen, then take some action to force the change. I think they should really slow it down. I'd rather stop them altogether, but we know they're not going to do that. But and I know I can just tell now that the people are so angry in the comments because of the way this has been handled, and I completely agree. But I generally hope that this is what America are thinking behind closed doors, without the camera switched off. I generally hope that that's what Biden and the administration are generally thinking. In another potential policy shift, NBC reported last week that administration officials are drafting options for formally recognizing an independent Palestinian state. That would be huge if they did that. We know David Cameron has stated it, but I don't think the US would go that far. Yet, even as Biden escalates his rhetoric, he's not yet prepared to make significant policy changes, officials said. He and his aides continue to believe his approach of unequivocally supporting Israel is the right one. Some Democrats in Congress have called for putting conditions on the US aid to Israel. Other Democrats, including military veterans who fought in Iraq and Afghanistan, have cited their experience and questioned Israel's tactics, arguing that heavy bombardment and steep civilian casualties are counterproductive measures and a threat to providing more fuel to extremists. One irritant Biden has expressed in recent private conversations, according to people familiar with his comments, is that he feels his administration keeps coming up with good deals for Israel, such as recent ones involving Saudi Arabia, only to have Netanyahu reject them. So, like I've said, this here is quite significant. So, America has been really trying hard to have some kind of agreement between Saudi Arabia and Israel, and it appears that Netanyahu is kind of the big stumbling block here. I do wonder if there's those within Israel's government who are not happy with Netanyahu in particular. I'm pretty sure there has been some news reports that there are some people within the government who are really angry with the way Netanyahu is handling things. But yeah, it's it would not surprise me if there is some great deal of frustration within the Israeli government over Netanyahu's role at the moment. A deal to release hostages and pause Israel's military operations would cap weeks of high-level efforts by Biden and his top aides to secure a pact, which they hope will eventually lead to a long-term ceasefire. In perhaps one of his rawest recent private moments, however, the president said that Netanyahu wants the war to drag on so he can remain in power. Three of the people familiar with his comments said. At a fundraiser Biden attended in the past few weeks, he spoke about Israel and his frustrations with Netanyahu to a small group of donors in response to being thanked for standing with Israel and against anti-Semitism. Biden took the opportunity to lay out some of his views according to a supporter who was present. I'm a Zionist, Biden said, reiterating his views that Hamas must be destroyed and that Israel must be protected according to the supporter. But Biden has also aired his frustration with Netanyahu, who is often referred to as Bibi. He did say Bibi started off great, but he has been a pain in the backside lately, or he has been killing me lately, one of those things. The person who was present for Biden's comments recalled. He goes, he deserves, but he's doing a disservice of late. Interesting to say the least. We have to be careful, obviously, though, that this is I would say take this article in particular with a bit of a pinch of salt. I think it's fair to say, guys, because it is, whether or not how true this is, we don't know, but both America and the West need to really start understanding that this cannot continue, and that there's more frustration coming from people, from the public, as it is. There's a great deal of anger and frustration coming from the public on this, and it needs to change. This situation. We want a ceasefire. I want a ceasefire. The majority of, I think there's anyone who's watching this video will probably want a ceasefire too. You know, how many more lives need to be lost? I said this earlier on. Yeah, what happened on October the 7th was an absolute tragedy, and we repeat that as much times as we want. But that does not give Israel the right, yeah, to respond in the manner that they have. The way they have handled it is so completely disparaging, and not thinking in any way, shape, or form about the consequences of this as well. So it seems to be more and more about Netanyahu here, rather than the government, actually, now the more I think about what's been happening here. Yeah, the man needs to go. The man needs to go. It's just the way it's been handled is just absolutely atrocious, guys. So, guys, while you're here, we just got what we're going to be talking now. We're going to finish off. We're talking about what's happening with regards to things in Russia, and we're going to have a look at the deep state map. Guys, while you're here, if you haven't already, hit the like button. We greatly appreciate it. Share this across social media and hit that bell notification icon to be notified of when I upload another video. So, this is one of the latest reports from the Kiev Independent. I've covered these in short videos now. I just want to make this clear before I read this out. I don't know how many of you here who are here now watching this video, but these numbers, they are not 100% factual, but these are about as accurate as you could possibly get to numbers of what's actually happening in terms of number counts within the war in Ukraine. And the reason I cover them is because I think it's very important to know the losses of life that has been occurring during this during this war. And 397,000 troops have lost their lives in Ukraine since February the 4th, 2022. Now, again, it's an estimate, but still, that many lives have been lost needlessly because of this war with Russia, and it should not be happening in any way, shape, or form, guys. So, just to reiterate some of the numbers, and we'll look at some other news bits with regards to the war in Ukraine. So, they've lost 307,000 troops in Ukraine since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. On February 24th, the General Staff of Ukraine's armed forces have reported that this number includes 1,090 casualties Russian forces suffered just over the past day. So over just the past day, over 1,000 casualties as well. According to the report, that Russia has also lost over 6,424 tanks, 12,000 armoured fighting vehicles, 12,623 vehicles and fuel vehicles, 9,500 artillery systems, 981 multiple rocket launch systems, 667 air defense systems, 332 airplanes, 325 helicopters, 7,332 drones, and 24 boats. All this equipment, all these lives have been lost as a result of this war, guys. Now, again, these are not 100%, but these are about as close as you can get to the accurate numbers, and it's devastating that so much lives have been lost as a result of this. And this is just Russian forces, yeah, that have been counted. We don't actually know the true number, and we're not even talking about the civilian lives that have been lost from the Ukraine's perspective, as well as troops' lives that have been lost from Ukraine's perspective as well. So, and that number, when that finally comes, when this war ends, whenever that will be a horrifying number, to say the least. And it should not be. This war is just terrible in every way, shape, or form. So, another story here. So, over 10,000 square meters of land contaminated due to Russian February 10th attack on the Kharlov oil depot. So, a Russian drone attacked an oil depot in Kharlov overnight on February the 10th, which led to a fuel leak that has contaminated over 10,000 square meters of land. Sergei Bolov, head of the investigative department of regional police, said on the 12th. The attack caused a fire that engulfed 15 homes and killed at least 7 people, including a family with 3 children. Said Carlos Mayor El Talif later reported that 57 people had been injured in the attack and declared February 11th as a day of mourning in the city. Due to its proximity to the Russian border, Kharlov and the surrounding oblasts are frequently targeted by Russian drones and missiles. Over 3,800 metric tons of fuel were stored in the targeted oil depot, Bolov had told local media outlet Guyana. In addition to polluting the land, these oil products repeatedly spill into the Nashikwa River, which flows through Kharlov. Yeah, so even more so it's not just the loss of life there, but obviously huge significant damage to the environment, this attack there by them. Another one here. Russia introduces a bill to ban foreign state-funded organisations. So Russian lawmakers have brought forward a bill on February 12th to expand its purview of existing legislation that bans so-called undesirable organisations from operating within the country. The laws on undesirable organisations has existed since 2015 and has been used to target perceived opponents of Russian President Vladimir Putin's regime, including NGOs, independent media outlets, human rights groups and others. There are currently 137 such organisations listed as undesirable. Organisations belonging to the list are banned from operating in Russia, as it is illegal for individuals and other media outlets to share their content. The new proposed legislation would expand the list to include foreign state-funded organisations such as media outlets like BBC or the RFE/RL. The bill is designed to combat sanctions, block investment projects, training agents or influence interference in Russian elections, inciting of ethnic hatred and much more, said lawmaker Vasily Peskov. Peskov added that agencies directly run by foreign states will not be added to the list, nor will organisations that Russia is a member of. The Institute for the Study of War, ISS, wrote that the bill would make it more difficult for Russian journalists working for organisations that oppose the regime to report on domestic policies, as they would be banned from entering the country. The bill is large part of a larger Kremlin effort to consolidate control over and stifle dissent in the Russian information space of the March 2024 Russian presidential election. The ISW had wrote it's not even going to be a proper election anyway. His opponents are being silenced, any ones that are considered a threat to him. It will also likely severely restrict opposition media opposition in Russia for the long term. Many of the organisations such as BBC, RFE and RL are already only accessible in Russia through a VPN. The Registry of Undesirable Organisations is separate from the infamous Foreign Agents Law, which the Russian state has also widely used to crack down on opposing views. The Foreign Agents Law requires organisations that receive funding from abroad are only perceived by the Kremlin to have been influenced by foreign entities to register as foreign agents. The label imposes strict financial reporting and self-disclosure requirements. Any foreign agent must undergo rigorous financial audits and label all their content with a disclaimer stating that it is being distributed by a foreign agent. It's ridiculous there. So this one here is just another one here. Russia shells 4 communities in Sunny Oblast. The continuous strikes that are taking place in Sunny Oblast as well. Russian forces have attacked border area settlements in Sunny Oblast on the February 12th, fired 14 times and caused in at least 59 explosions. The local military administration have reported via Telegram. So what they normally do is, so the way it works here, guys, for just to understanding how Kiev Independent gets its information. So those who are on the front lines and that, they report them what's happening via Telegram, and then obviously that Telegram, then it's obviously conveyed conveyed here on the Kiev Independence. So that's kind of where it is. How accurate it is, we don't know, but these are about as close as you can get to kind of the sources of what's happening on the front lines here, unless you're down there yourself. The Russian military struck the communities of Kashgaba, Belevipa, Velika, Pushkin, and Kontan using various weapons, including drones, mines, and mortar shelling. No casualties or damage to civilian structure were reported. That's good. Velika Pushka experienced the most attacks, with 28 total explosions recorded. This town is located close to the Ukraine-Russian border, on the left bank of the Voska River. The communities along the southern Oblast border have been subject to near daily attacks since the Ukrainian troops liberated Russian-occupied areas in the region of April 2022. And I've just seen there's 2 more reports we'll look at, guys, before we go to the deep state map. I don't know if this one will update or not. I'm just waiting for it to update. It's the headline for it. I don't know if it'll open up or not. It says, oh, there we go. Speaker Johnson preemptively rejects Ukraine's AA bill as it moves forward in the Senate. So obviously one of the biggest stumbling blocks for Ukraine is what's happening over in America within the Senate. So US House Speaker Mike Johnson suggested on the 12th that he would not support a $95 billion foreign aid bill that includes funding for Ukraine on the grounds that it did not address the ongoing crisis at the southern border, which is absolute nonsense. This is absolute nonsense because they provided a very, very tough immigration bill and they rejected it outright. The bill, which has slowly progressed through the Senate, allocates $60 billion to Ukraine, $14.1 billion for security aid to Israel, $9.2 billion for humanitarian support, and $4.8 billion to assist regional partners in the Indo-Pacific area. A potential final vote in the Senate could come as early as Valentine's Day. It is the latest attempt to pass new aid for Ukraine after months of deadlock in Congress. In the meantime, US funding for Ukraine is all but run out. House Republicans were crystal clear from the very beginning of the discussions that any so-called national security supplement legislation must recognise that national security begins at our own border, Johnson wrote on Twitter. In the absence of having received any single border policy change from the Senate, the House will have to continue its work at its own will on these important matters, he concluded. While it appears possible that the bill will ultimately clear the Senate, Johnson's comments illustrate the ongoing difficulty Ukraine aid faces in the Republican-led House. The Johnson and Republican lawmakers have repeatedly insisted that Congress first address the southern border. Again, they had a bill that could have dealt with this, and they chosen and they gave in to a lot of what they wanted, the Republicans, and then Trump said no, don't vote for it. They really are Trump puppets. They really are. Including implementing controversial changes that are broadly unpopular with Democrats before approving new funding for Ukraine and other US allies. Other Republicans are categorically opposed to the new aid for Ukraine, regardless of any Democratic concessions on border and immigration policy. Former President Donald Trump, the leading Republican presidential candidate, has told members of his party not to pass legislation on the border, as he plans to run on the issue in the general election. It's just like, well, what's the point then? Like, what's the point of having this discussion? Like, it's just, you're not helping anyone. President Joe Biden, speaking with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz on February the 9th at the White House, said it would be close to criminal neglect if the US Congress fails to stand by Ukraine. It is neglect. It is neglect. Right, last one we'll look at here before we look at the deep state map. Russia attacks against Ukraine killed 4, injured 11 over the past 24 hours. So Russia attacks against Ukraine killed 4 people and injured another 11 over the past 24 hours. Regional authorities reported early on the 13th of February. Russia targeted a total of 9 Ukrainian oblasts: Sumy, Cherkov, Mykolaiv, Luhansk, Kharkiv, Dnipropetrovsk, Donetsk, Kherson, Zaporizhzhia. Casualties were reported in the later 5 regions. Russian forces struck an agricultural facility in the village of Kalavika in Kharkiv Oblast at around 7:30 a.m. local time on the 13th of February. So it's literally just a few hours from when I've recorded this, killing 2 males and wounding 2 more people, according to Olaf Sugabol, the regional governor. Russia hit multiple settlements in Kharkiv Oblast over the past 24 hours, also damaging a house in Kulapur, said Sudabiku. Russian troops shelled Nikopol in Donetsk Oblast early on the 13th of February, killing a 64-year-old man and damaging his house, Sergei, the regional governor, had reported. Russia's earlier attacks on Nikopol district wounded a 73-year-old woman, as well as damage to an agricultural enterprise, almost 20 houses and other buildings on February the 12th, according to Leskits. An 83-year-old woman was killed in a Russian overnight attack in the village of Lovsk in Kherson Oblast. Oliska Prolgan, the regional governor, said on Telegram. Russian attacks against Kherson Oblast overnight, and on the previous day injured 2 other people and hit residential areas, according to Progin. Russia launched 127 strikes on 17 settlements in Zaporizhzhia Oblast in the past day, the regional administration said on Facebook. The attack injured a 67-year-old man in Halapol and a 37-year-old law enforcement officer in the village of Pavlivka, according to Zaporizhzhia Oblast authorities. Russian attack in Donetsk Oblast on February 12th injured 3 residents in Selados and another in Ilo-Oskos. Donetsk Oblast Governor Vladimir Fashkin had reported. The attacks damaged over 20 houses, a kindergarten, 4 apartment buildings and 2 non-residential buildings, Fashkin had stated. Actually, there's one more here I just want to highlight. Ukraine downed 16 drones overnight as well. So overnight as well, they downed 16 drones. So 16 drones and 23 Shalar drones launched overnight. The drones were launched from Presko-Oskos in southern Russia, as well as Cape Chonga in the occupied Crimea area as well. Guys, like I say, if you want to have a look at some of these reports, you can do so by the Kiev Independent. Of what's basically happening with regards to the war in Russia. I am just going to get out the deep state map for you guys. So this is the deep state map. I'll put a link in the description if you guys want to have a look at it yourself. The time of the latest update, just for reference, guys, is the 12th of the second at February. 12th of February at 21:34 time. It's the latest. This is the latest they have here, guys. So we'll just scroll out a little bit just to see the current situation. That's it, obviously, from a larger perspective. Obviously, it doesn't appear like too much has changed in particular, but if we scroll down, there appears to be a little bit of push there towards Velska-Noska. Not too much there, but they're trying to make push ways there. Chasvisvad looks like they're trying to make a gain ground in there, but obviously they're trying to push forward. They can't seem to surround it there. As you can see, there's the green part there where there's a lot of Ukrainian strong grounds there, so not really getting much in terms of there. If we go down to one of the biggest places that are taking place where the war is here, Alavika, as you guys can see, the surround is continuing. They still haven't yet cut off supplies, but I do fear that at some point they will eventually get it. I fear they're holding for now, but I don't know how long they'll be able to hold. Really, it's becoming difficult. They're trying to make some gains, obviously, around here towards Lichman there, and Klospitz there. They're trying to make some minor gains there, but yeah, Ukraine are just trying to hold what they have as of right now, guys. Just seeing if there's any other changes. No other changes along the rest of the border there as well, guys. So that's the situation so far when it comes to the conflict in Russia, Ukraine and Russia. Obviously, this is making it worse by not having the aid and fundings that they need. They desperately need more help. Ukraine. They desperately need more help if they are to try and push back some of these pushes by Russia, and hopefully they'll get pushed. They will be able to push them back at some point, but they won't be until they get the weapons and equipment to do so. So it's a case of just Ukraine trying to hold what they have right now until more aid, more equipment, and more troops comes in. So guys, we have reached the end of Regan's news round. Just gone over the hour, actually. I wasn't expecting to hit an hour, but we managed to do so. So guys, let me know what you guys think of some of the stories that we covered today. Talking about the conflict we're talking about, obviously, what's Trump's comments, what's happening in Venezuela as well. Biden's comments about Netanyahu, Finland's elections. Let me know what your thoughts are about some of these stories in the comments section down below. Thank you to those who have watched the premiere. If you've just watched the full video now, really greatly appreciate it. Thank you very much for doing so, guys. Before you go, if you can, please hit the like button. We greatly appreciate. Share it across social media so others are aware of this video, and hit the bell notification icon so you'll be notified of when I upload another video. And if you want to financially support me in the work I do here, you can do so by becoming a YouTube member for as little as 99p, or joining me on Patreon for exclusive content there. I also do exclusive content on Rumble as well, where I also cover some World News also on Rumble as well. So if you guys want to check either of those out, please feel free to do so. So thanks so much for watching, guys, and I hope to catch you all very, very soon.